Hi, and welcome to this edition of the Reliability Experience. Today, we've got a very special guest, Mr. Adrian Messer, Director of U.S. Operations for UE Systems. Adrian, welcome.
Welcome. Pleasure hanging out with you all today.
Thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks for being with us. So, Adrian, why don't you give us some introduction about yourself and your organization?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm Adrian Messer. I'm the Director of Operations for the U.S. For UE Systems. I've been with UE Systems since October of 2003, so coming up on 17 years. Pretty much my whole career in maintenance and reliability has been with UE. Started out as a regional manager covering the Southeast U.S. I live right outside of Greenville, South Carolina, so I was kind of responsible for the Carolinas, Northern Georgia, Eastern Tennessee, and have been in this role now since about 2011. So kind of what I do is we have a total of 15 what we call regional managers scattered across the U.S. So I kind of help to oversee their daily operations and duties, as well as visiting some of our corporate accounts. Of course, before the pandemic, went to a lot of conferences and gave a lot of presentations. So haven't been doing that as much this year, but hopefully second half of the year, things will get back to some sense of normalcy. So pretty much what I do. But yeah, UE Systems, if there's people listening that aren't familiar with us, the company has been around since 1973. So, we're coming up on 50 years soon to be. But we make ultrasonic instruments. So we make a total of 9 different models. They're used for various applications for preventive and predictive maintenance. And aside from making the instruments, we also provide training. So we have some formal level 1, level 2 certification classes, as well as some online application specific courses.
Awesome.
Awesome. So for those that may be tuning in that have no idea what any of that meant, can you give us a brief understanding of the technology and ultrasound?
Yep, sure. So, similar to the way an infrared camera sees what you can't see, an accelerometer feels what you can't feel, ultrasound hears what you can't hear. So we're, in a sense, another extension of a user's sense of, in this case, hearing. So we're able to go out and hear things that may be taking place in our plant, in our facilities that we could normally not hear because of all the other ambient background noise. So our primary applications, what we focus on, will be compressed air and gas leak detection. It's probably the most widely used application. It's the easiest thing you can do, and it's also the application where you can have the quickest payback. So we're able to quantify and put a dollar amount in the CFM loss to how much those air leaks are costing. So from an energy standpoint, again, it's one of the right out of the box applications where you can pretty much pay for it first time out in use. Along those same lines, steam trap inspection, another big energy application. So, of course, in this time period, people, seen a lot of people take advantage of this, downtime, time where they're not quite as busy. And they're focusing on, some of those energy savings. Of course, with the kind of the downturn, that we've kind of seen that in the past in like 08. And really what kind of propelled UE Systems to where we are today was the energy crisis back in the late 70s, early 80s. Again, people wanted to focus on saving energy. And that kind of, helped UE to be where we are today. Then, bearing condition monitoring, where we see a lot of people using ultrasound, works hand in hand with vibration analysis. Ultrasound assisted bearing lubrication. I would say that's probably the second most widely used application. Again, super easy to do. And y'all know as well as I do, when you're out in these plants and factories, you probably see more bearing failures due to over lubrication than under lubrication. So, we see a lot of people using ultrasound to help to extend those their bearing life and reduce those lubrication related failures. And then also electrical inspection. We work hand in hand with infrared thermography, and again that we're listening for electrical faults because there's some faults that don't always produce heat, like corona discharge, but corona does produce sound. So if you're using a combination of ultrasound and infrared, you're pretty well guaranteed to find about any kind of fault that might be occurring.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so now we've bought the instrument. We've done some sort of little training. When it comes to setting up an ultrasound program, what are some of the key success factors that you see from successful programs that you've witnessed yourself?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, honestly, I'd just say a lot of it just begins with basic fundamentals of change management. Start out with specific goals and expectations with a purpose. Why is ultrasound being implemented? Would say, involve the people, the people that are going to be the primary users of that technology. Make sure they understand, one, how it works, what they can do with it, and then what failure modes are going to be identifying. And then also, what assets, have in mind, what assets would be monitored. But really, I always go back to the people part of it. Y'all know, again, y'all do a whole lot more training than I do, but, there's nothing more frustrating as a trainer when you go in, you show up at the customer site, and, the person in charge gathers some techs around and they say, okay, here's UE Systems. They're here to train you on this ultrasound equipment. And the techs look at each other and they're like, UE who? Ultrasound what? So again, make sure that the people that are going to be the primary users of that tool understand, what it is, what it's going to be used for, and then what equipment they're going to be, using it on. So again, just kind of some of the fundamentals of change management.
Yeah.
Adrian, given the current climate, is UE Systems doing anything to offer online accessibility to training?
Yeah, actually, just this week, some of you may have even got an email from Maureen that went out today. We officially have a virtual level 1 course, which can be done all online. So it's a blended course in that we pair one of our full-time trainers. So they're there, virtually. The course, the class, the individual students, of course, they're going to be virtual as well. So they have it's a mix of trainer delivering content, and then they have pre-assigned hands-on activities that they would then go out with an ultra probe to go out and do the hands-on field testing, and then they come back again in front of the trainer, and then they discuss those findings. So it is kind of a blended in that it's part hands-on with those predetermined activities that anybody could do at any plant or factory, combined with one of our trainers. So yeah, we just released that this week.
Yeah, that's awesome. That'll help out tremendously.
Yeah, and honestly, that's something that we should have had already, but we can thank coronavirus for kind of forcing us to make that happen.
I think we're all on the same boat, right? Is we all could have had some stuff and been more planned and prepared.
If this is a predictive technology, why didn't we know about this ahead of time?
I know, we should have predicted.
How didn't we see this?
Well, we didn't see it because we weren't using infrared. We didn't hear it because
I didn't
hear.
Yeah. I didn't wear my coronavirus glasses the day it kind of came out. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, corona is something you detect, right?
That's what you said.
It is. Yeah, we can detect corona. Not the count of the Lyme and not the virus.
Right. So you talked a little bit about with the program identifying failure modes and going after those failure modes. What are some of the failure modes that you see when using the ultrasound?
I kind of briefly talked about electrical. So if we're talking about electrical equipment, we're listening for and detecting corona, tracking, and arcing. So corona will be present at 1,000 volts and greater. Then at any voltage, you can have tracking and arcing. So where we see people using ultrasound for electrical, a lot of times they're doing it for no other reason other than safety. Because we can listen before we actually open things up to do a traditional infrared scan or, some other kind of visual inspection. So mechanically, where we see a lot of people using ultrasound is going to be more and more we see it being used as kind of the first line of defense. Where ultrasound tends to be really good is we're really good at finding early stage premature type bearing defects. That's even represented on the P/F curve. One of the first technologies that you'll see is structure-borne ultrasound. So because of that, if we're trending the decibel level, so if that bearing starts to make more noise, or if that gearbox starts to make more noise, then we know a change has taken place. And we pretty well know what the change is if we know the increase above, say, a baseline. We know if it's just in need of lubrication, or if we now know that bearing is in a little further down the P/F curve, closer to point F. But built into our spectralizer software, we have a bearing fault frequency calculator in there. So if we know just a couple of basic pieces of information, like the speed and then the number of balls, it'll calculate out a outer race, inner race, ball pass, and cage frequency. So again, beyond that, if that bearing starts to wear even more, those well-defined harmonics tend to get a little more masked or hidden with all that other now background noise that bearing is making. So that's why we're really good at picking it up early.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
So you've been doing this a really long time, Adrian. One of the questions I've always wanted to ask you is, all the organizations you've been to who have begun programs or purchased your equipment, two questions really. One is, what's the percentage of those organizations that have stuck with this through adoption and this becomes part of their everyday life? And then the second part of the question is, for those that maybe haven't, what are some of the key factors to make sure that adoption happens?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what I've seen over the years with some of these, what I would say corporate type customers that we've dealt with, where they've implemented ultrasound across, multiple plants, multiple facilities, that kind of tends to come in waves. So they'll implement it, and they'll get something good established, and then they may go 5, 6, 7 years, and you never hear from them again until, all of a sudden, hey, we need to get this started back up again. I think part of that just comes from, culture. In our industry, one thing that I noticed really quickly is you have a lot of people that change roles, change jobs. They may start out at one plant, and then next thing you know, they're moving over to a different company. So I think part of that is just related to turnover. Part of it could be driven too by whatever that next person in charge deems to be more important. And sometimes, maintenance or, condition monitoring is not always at the top of the list. But I would say the percent, if you had to put a percentage on it, I would say out of the people that have implemented a program and kind of stuck with it, I would say probably 40% are still doing it. So it's relatively low if you look at, how many have.
And that's
then
based on their touch points with you is also, right? Like, that number could also be slightly low because, well, maybe they're doing so great they've never needed to call you back.
It could be, yeah. And we see that a lot too. But we also see where, this is what we really like, we like it when, somebody starts a successful, say, corporate implementation of ultrasound, get it up and running, and then that person, moves to another organization who's not currently doing any kind of condition monitoring. So, again, it's where ultrasound is just a really good fit. Yeah.
One of those guys.
Yeah, sounds familiar.
Yeah, that's you should, those should be really familiar to you. But again, it's where ultrasound is a really good fit. Again, we do a lot of work with plants and factories who aren't currently doing any condition monitoring. So again, ultrasound is a really good fit because it's so versatile. The same tool that can be used for electrical can be used for bearings or steam or air leaks. So again, it's just where we tend to do a lot of work in those types of environments.
No, that and the ease of use. When it comes to the predictive technologies, that hands down between oil analysis and ultrasound, ease of use.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And so, it doesn't take a category 3 analyst to figure out if, what your problem is or whatever, which is what I enjoy about it, because I can go in, I can train operators, I can train just about anybody. I have them using the technology. That's why I adopted it early on and kept doing it everywhere I went.
And like you said earlier, I mean, they do the training, it goes out and it pays for itself in the
Right.
training. I mean, this is the technology that is a slam dunk in that arena.
Well, yeah, I mean, bring you in for a 2-hour session just to demo the tool, and you've already found enough to pay for the tool. I mean, it's not a hard sell when it comes to its ROI and those types of things either. So.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that earlier this week. I don't know, it was just a random thought, but yeah, I mean, years ago, when I first started, the way that we go out and demo, say, an ultra probe is a whole lot different now than it was, 17 years ago. Fortunately, again, we have a lot more users of the technology out in the industry now, so I think that is kind of attributed to that, and then. The fact that ultrasound is kind of advanced to where it's more diagnostic as opposed to just being a leak detector. So it's certainly a little bit more easier now when we go in to demonstrate or talk about the technology.
Yeah. I think the hardest part of the whole thing is getting people to fix the leaks.
That's always been the hardest part. That's always been the hardest part.
Actually going out and fixing them, because they show you this report. Look at how much I saved. How many of these are fixed? None. No, you didn't save any.
I would agree with that. As a matter of fact, I was in a plant 2 weeks ago, and we were doing a treasure hunt, and they had called on me to come in and just kind of assist with that. But yeah, we were out there and we found one leak that had 3 tags on it. Went off the oldest tag went back to 2016. That tells you that leak's been going for 4 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, then you can add up that cost. I bet that leak itself at 3 almost paid for the gun. 4 years.
Well, we didn't multiply it by 4, but it was about I think that leak was about a $800 a year leak. So times 4, $3,200. Yeah.
It'll pay for at least a 3,000, close to it.
Right.
Over 4 years it's leaking. One leak, which is crazy.
Right.
I mean, it's just crazy.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I love to see too is working with finance to trend your utility spend month to month, and then as you start to implement these programs, you just start seeing it trend down. And it's phenomenal. You can't deny the financial impact at that point.
And some people want to argue. Some people want to argue with the numbers, but we made that report to err a little on the conservative side anyway. So the actual savings is going to be a little bit more than what that compressed air and gas leak report shows. But even if you just take half of it, it still can be a significant number.
Look, when I can walk somebody out and show them the 5 compressors they installed we didn't need anymore, I don't even have to report the financial. How much do these cost to install? When you can do that, I mean, that it's a slam dunk.
You mean when demand keeps going up, but we haven't installed any new equipment?
Right.
I know we did the same thing, Adrian, back in the early 2000s. We were taking the same compressed gas leak costing report that you had, and we just cut all those numbers in half. And then at that facility, we had argon and helium and all kinds of very expensive gases, and we actually adopted the same spreadsheet and just converted it for all those gases. And I mean, some of those things were just astronomical costs when we had leaks.
Especially if you're using some of those specialty gases. I mean, one leak could be tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, we were actually testing the incoming trucks. So because they were all bottled, localized to different laboratories. So when they were coming in on the truck, we would just test the truck before it ever dropped.
That's a great idea.
That's too proactive. What do you think?
We actually found a helium tank that was leaking that way. That alone was worth pay for the gun.
Right. Oh, no joke. I mean, one of those bottles is nuts. It's nuts.
So how about some use cases that you have? What are some of your most interesting use cases?
Well, along those lines of the leak detection, I guess this is probably the most recent one that kind of stood out to me. But last year I was down at aircraft manufacturing facility down in Charleston, South Carolina, and they use a tremendous amount of nitrogen. And they had just bought an UltraProbe 10,000. And so we were down there doing some hands-on training with them. And about 30 or 40 minutes into the training, we went out to their nitrogen tanks, and we found a pinhole nitrogen leak. And we plugged that into the spreadsheet. So again, based off the decibel level, the pressure, and then for the nitrogen, it was how much they were paying. So a dollar amount per 1,000 cubic feet of that gas. And it was about a $24,000 a year leak. So that's one of the ones, just from a number standpoint, that just kind of stood out to me. And so they basically paid for 2 UltraProbe 10,000s from just that one leak.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. And I'm sure that it happens all the time. And then you have people like Eric at, is it Michelin or Goodyear?
Yeah, Michelin. Yeah, Eric Holtz.
Yeah, Eric Holtz. Yeah, I mean, he gets crazy.
Yeah.
He was getting crazy with this thing. Like,
yeah, he's one of those guys who kind of matched up the energy part of it. So he was even monitoring the amps on his compressors, and so he even had that tracked.
Yeah.
And we're talking about over about a 3-4 year period. I mean, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and not only the leaks, but also how much power, less power they were using to run those compressors.
Yeah. So what's one of the most creative ways you've seen the tool used that kind of threw you?
I hate this question because it leads me down a path that I don't want to talk about. So yeah, we back in the day, we used to have people that would use ultrasound for we'll say non-traditional uses, like quality control types of checks. It's one of those things where, it worked that one time, but does it work every single time? No. So like we've had some, underground leaks. We've had, we used to do a lot with wind noise water leaks in the automotive and the aircraft industry. So that if nothing else, that it's neat to go see that being used on a, big, C5, cargo transporter, military transporter plane. That's one of the cool things I've got to see being used. But so we try to stay away from the quality control kinds of stuff. I mean, I even had I guess one of the worst ones I've ever been on. We were going out. They wanted us to come in to look to see if we could find leaks on fire extinguishers. So that was a complete waste of time. So we've kind of learned to, well, if you're like me, sometimes it's hard to say no. Sometimes you just got to say no. But now we just try to stick with what we know works every single time, and that's some of those core applications that I mentioned in the beginning.
Right, which I agree with. I just know that, attending the conferences with you guys and being around users, they always find some creative ways to utilize technology. We've
had bats, we've had, termites behind a wall, we've had bugs it was some kind of a worm eating beans, dried beans. I mean, it's just, yeah.
I mean, it's crazy.
I get strange looks when I go car shopping and I throw the tone generator in the car, shut the door, and I'm going around the door gassing. And the guy's going, "What are you doing?" Yeah. Shut up, I'm listening.
Try that the next time you have to buy a new refrigerator.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. I'm going to try it on my washing machine. No, I don't want this one. Doesn't seal at the top. Sorry. There you go. So you guys have a ton of remote monitoring technologies. Right? You have the forecast, you have some of those things. How's all that going for you guys? Is it being adopted?
Yeah, the funny thing is like the UltraTrak 750, the RAS sensor, those have been around since before my time with UE, so probably 20 years. But we've got more of those in use now than at ever before in UE Systems history, which is pretty amazing to have a product that's been out for that long, but yet, more now than ever before. But just from some of my recent discussions that I've had with people that are interested in doing remote monitoring with ultrasound, there seems to be kind of two things that are driving it. One is just they've had a catastrophic failure on a piece of equipment that they want to take measures to implement some type of monitoring to hopefully prevent that from happening again. So again, they're kind of reacting to something that happened. And then the second thing that really kind of was an eye opener for me was manpower. We've got a couple of projects in the works now that manpower specifically to do traditional handheld data collection routes was either not available or not an option at all. So those are really the two things that I've seen this year that seem to be kind of driving the remote monitoring with ultrasound.
Yeah, well, it makes sense, especially over the last 3 or 4 months.
Unfortunately.
Well, you can stay 6 feet away from the leak and still hear it with ultrasound.
Well, that's good though. Social distancing with ultrasound.
Yeah, right. Yeah. We can social distance with ultrasound. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, can you walk us through some of those remote monitoring technologies that you guys have and kind of what they do?
So I talked about the what we call a RAS, or remote access sensor. Those aren't really standalone remote monitoring devices. They work in conjunction with an ultraprobe. So they're really meant to be installed on equipment that's behind a cage or a guard. You still got to have access to be able to listen to it safely. So you can plug that RAS sensor directly into an ultraprobe. That same sensor also works with our forecast, which y'all mentioned. We came out with that forecast not quite 2 years ago.
It's been about, say close to 2 years.
Yep. So what that is it's a 4-channel, so we can bring as many as 4 of those RASs together to the forecast. The forecast acts as kind of like a video recorder, so it has its own internal data storage, so it's always storing data. But then you choose in the UltraTrend DMS software how often you want that data to come over from the forecast. So that's really what makes it powerful, in that we're only sending the data that we want when we want it over our plant's internet network. And that data includes both decibel level readings and sound file recordings. So it is kind of a remote kind of diagnostic type tool. But it'll send that data over either hardwired through Ethernet or wirelessly, just plug a router into it. But there's another parameter in the software where you can, if it's trending a bearing, for instance, and if it reaches an alarm level, you can choose to have that data come over more frequently. So if that point reaches an alarm, then you can have that data come over instead of once a month, maybe once an hour or once a day. Then you've got the option to also bring over data what led up to the alarm, so you can kind of see what happened that led up to that alarm. And then again, decibel level readings and sound file recordings. It'll also send you alerts, so it'll send you an email alert or a text alert. So it'll give you the current ultrasound information and then what the baseline sound file and decibel level should be. The UltraTrack 750 that I mentioned, that's again a sensor that's been around for a long time, but it has a 4 to 20 milliamp output. So it's a contact mounted sensor that could be used for mechanical inspection, or even we've seen that one being used for valve leak testing. So if they want to monitor valves that may start to leak by. The most common way we see that sensor being used right now is they'll wire that directly into a PLC. Then that data can be sent over to like a plant historian like Pi or any other kind of SCADA system. But that same UltraTrack 750 also works with our OnTrak, which we just released last month. But our OnTrak, we're really excited about that. And I guess what makes it even more special is we were able to release that during a global pandemic. But really, it's a standalone IIoT system that will monitor the condition of bearings. So it'll monitor bearing condition, even including lubrication. So like the standard configuration with that OnTrak is it'll come standard with a 16-channel configuration. So you can wire as many as 16 of the UltraTrack 750s into it. So it's always storing data, and then it will send that data over to a web-based, customizable, user customizable dashboard. So it'll send that over via hardwired Ethernet, Wi-Fi, or cellular. So it does have a cellular, SIM card. We can configure that. So really we can ship it to where it's basically plug and play. So you wire the sensors, plug it in, and it's sending data. So it is cloud, so you can use your own cloud service, or we have a cloud, we use AWS. So again, you can send that data, but you own the data. So that's what a lot of people like about it. We feel like it's priced right, so it's a very economical option. But you can also wire in other types of sensors into that OnTrak. So if you got accelerometers, if you got temperature, you can integrate other types of sensors into it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's great.
And a customized.
Yeah, we're really excited about that. And again, it's scalable. So again, it comes standard with the 16 channel. So maybe you decide to use 8 at first, then you can always expand out into it once you get it up and running.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
Yeah, and I guess one other thing
that's going to be good though. It's going to be good for the market.
Yeah, one other thing that I like about it is it gives the user more options to use their data. So again, you're not limited to our Ultratrend DMS database. You can send that data anywhere you want to, and it's web-based. So it's a web-based dashboard. So it gives people more options to do more things with their data.
It's good to see a predictive maintenance organization, in this case, UE Systems, doing that, because one of the biggest troubles we've always had has been you can't really integrate all this into your CMMS easily, right? And with the advent of things like Pi and data historians, you can now kind of talk back and forth much easier. And for a platform to allow not only their own devices, but other devices makes that much more seamless.
Yeah, it is.
And takes a giant leap forward. So I'm really happy to hear that UE Systems not only did this, but that you're the organization that is doing it.
Right. And
we're super excited about it.
Yeah, owning the data is a big deal too, because if you go with a different provider, a lot of times if you quit using them, you lose everything because they own the data. And I think that's important. I don't think a lot of people really understand that when they contract out some of the stuff, that most of the time these people own your data, and when they leave, you don't get that back. And so that's huge too.
Or even just getting to the data.
Right.
I mean, so many, and we're not going to start naming those organizations, had locked down software in this space.
Yeah.
And it's great that yours is not only, pretty wide open and you get to own it, but it'll just dump right into in a historian.
It's phenomenal, man.
That's really, really cool.
Well, you're gonna see, it's going to open innovation for a lot of these companies to utilize it in ways that we haven't even thought of, because of that ability. And so you're providing a method of innovation on top of everything else, and their ability to be creative with how they do it, because you're giving them that freedom, which is phenomenal, man. I think we're going to hear some stories come out of that.
As tight as everybody's internet, IT is now, we felt like that was important to not have that locked down.
Right.
Well, I mean, just think now. I mean, he's saying it'll not only take all that data, but it'll analyze it and let you know you're under lubricated.
Yeah.
And it's doing it in a mechanism from a data perspective that can go into a historian.
Yeah.
So now it's a really seamless capability to have your CMMS monitoring the historian as a metering point.
Yeah.
And when the alarm point hits,
generate a work order.
Says, go lubricate this band. I mean, this is a gigantic step forward for folks that are thinking about it.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
Yeah, we're excited to see how people use it.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. That's for sure. I'm excited about it.
So is there anything else new? And this is extremely new, so I'm not trying to put you under pressure to have anything different than that. But what else? Is there anything else new coming from UE Systems?
Yeah, so we actually released two new products this past month. So in conjunction with the Forecast, we have what's called the Foresight. So the Forecast uses those contact-mounted RAS sensors. The Foresight, same concept as the Forecast, but it's airborne. So it's primarily for electrical cabinets. So instead of it being a contact-mounted RAS sensor, it's going to use an airborne sensor. So again, you got up to 4 of those you can use to monitor, high voltage, switchgear, transformers, whatever. And then the faults, again, we'd be looking for would be corona tracking, arcing. So it'll send over, the decibel level readings as well as sound file recordings. So the Forecast is for mechanical. The Foresight is for electrical, and then of course the OnTrak is for mechanical as well.
Awesome.
Yep. And then our virtual level 1 course that we released this week. So a lot going on during this time that none of us have ever experienced before. So pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So where do folks find out more information about not only just what you were just mentioning, but UE Systems in general?
Yep. So we've had a lot going on in 2020, but earlier this year, before the pandemic and everything, we did update our website. So it has a completely different look. So if you haven't been there in a while, it's just uesystems.com. We kept a lot of the content that we had previously on the old format. So you can find our current training schedule. So we do have some actual physical locations for training, primarily starting in about September. Anything before that, will be moved over to our virtual blended level 1 course. We've got the online application specific courses. All that can be found under the training section. There's also some archived webinars. So Joe, I know you've got a few of those on there. So what we have on our website doesn't always relate directly to ultrasound. A lot of maintenance and reliability, best practice and, types of informative webinars. So I would just suggest anybody go into uesystems.com and just kind of click around and take a look at what we have to offer as far as products, training, and then, webinar type material.
Yeah, I was checking it out the other day, and I have to say the resource center now is phenomenal.
Much easier to navigate.
Yeah, it's awesome. And you have procedures in there. There's so much stuff there, and it's all free. It's not like you're charging for this stuff. So I definitely advise people to take advantage of it.
Yeah,
for
awesome. Sure.
All right.
Awesome. Well, Adrian, we want to thank you so much for your time today. It was amazing talking to you. The things that the folks at UE Systems are doing are not only exciting, but they're going to be, some of these are game changers. We're pretty excited about them.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, well, it's always great hanging out with y'all, and hopefully we can do it when we're all together, hopefully again sometime soon. But certainly appreciate all the support that you guys have shown over the years, and appreciate y'all putting this on today.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, no worries. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Adrian. Take care.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.